welcome to Product Talk series by Pragmatic Leaders. We are glad to see you all here. So, before we start today's session, I would like to give you all a little brief about Pragmatic Leaders. At Pragmatic Leaders, you are a part of a global family of aspirational professionals who proactively help each other in their career growth. So, Pragmatic Leaders functions like a full stack global career accelerator that rests on three core pillars: educate, we help you upskill via our proven courses and professional industry coaches. Second pillar is engage. We run our global community of product managers on Slack with access to online and offline meetups. So after this session, I'll share link to join our community with you all, and we are looking forward to a great engagement with you guys. And third thing is employ. So we operate a job platform and dedicated interview preparation courses to help you crack your dream job. So with that note, let's begin the session. Welcome Richa to the session. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am really excited to be talking to everyone here. So thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Richa, and I'm really excited, like I said, to talk to all of you here about how to break into product management. The way I'm thinking of the session for today is we'll talk a little bit about me and my journey. Some of the things I did to choose product management as a career, and some of the things that you can potentially do to figure out if that really is a career path you want to take. What was my journey into, what has been my career journey, and how did I break into product management, and what made me decide to do that? And then some of the strategies that I applied, and then I'm happy to share with you all. And then I want to leave a large portion of this session for question and answers, because I understand that everyone has a very different career path and a very different career journey. So what worked for me may not necessarily work for a lot of people, but we can probably brainstorm on what are some of the other creative ideas that we can leverage. So the agenda for today's session, like I said, I want to spend a large part of it talking about your questions, and I'm hoping I can answer some of them. And just because everyone's path and journey is very different from one another, and what may have worked for me may not necessarily work for everyone. And I want to be sure that we spend some time talking about some of the creative strategies that you can apply to get into product management, if that's something that you really, really want to do with your career. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about who I am. So my name is Richa. I play a lot of roles in my personal life. So I'm a mom, I'm a daughter, I'm a wife, I am an avid traveler. I write, I'm a speaker, I do theater. That's one of my biggest stress busting activities. I'm a photographer, and I'm a huge dog lover. And why I bring this up is because being a product manager at Google is one facet of my life. I love doing what I do, but it does not define me as a person. But that said, I'm also a product manager at Google. I have about 13 years of industry experience in a lot of varied forms, including consulting, QA and testing, program management, and now product management. And I've worked in several industries, which include fintech, ads, SMB, retail, and nonprofit. So with that, so this has been my path leading up to where I am right now. My journey is still on, and it has not been a linear path. And what I want to talk a little bit about, some different things that I've done in my career that have led me to where I am. So right out of college, I started as a consultant at Hewitt Associates in Delhi. So I had my education in India. I got into Hewitt Associates through campus placement, and that was the first job that I ever had. I did not know what I was going to do. I did not know what consultants do. I had a vague idea about, what I'm expected to do. But when I joined on my first day of job, we were put into this training session, and we were given a set of things that, that were expected of us. and it was very interesting. It was my job right out of college, the first time I was earning money, so everything was great. I was in Delhi, it was good time. And I spent like a couple of years into Hewitt Associates. I grew really fast there because I thoroughly enjoyed what I was doing. That is where I also got an MBA. My company sponsored my MBA at IIM Calcutta. And within a couple of years, I had this whole thing about wanting to do something of my own. I always was bursting with these ideas that I wanted to do more. I didn't like, and I didn't know how else to channel it. So a couple of years into my consulting career, which was doing really well, I decided to launch my own startup. The startup was an absolute failure. Okay. And I emphasize on that because I was really dreamy eyed, and I thought that I knew everything I needed to do in order to make this business run. I thought I knew my customers, I knew what I was doing. It did not work. And it was a huge setback for me because I was pretty confident of my skills at that point, which was 2 years of industry experience. And I was very, very confident that, I could go ahead and build something really fantastic. It did not work. And it it was it was something which became like a reflection point for me. And I needed to do something as a person. I had two options. Either I could, spend some time trying to figure out why my startup didn't work, or I go ahead and get more experience. I decided to choose the latter. Part of it has to do with, playing safe, and part of it has to do with the fact that I did not know what I could do. So at that point in time, I joined Yodlee, which in Bangalore, which was a very, very relatively less known startup, and not a lot of people knew about it. In fact, there was a running joke. There were times where people would ask me if it was a talcum company, which is this Yardley talcum powder, if that was what I was working for. And no, I had to actually stop them and tell them that no, hey, it's a fintech startup, and we're in this space, we're disrupting personal finance management, and nobody quite understood, it until I told them. But I took that risk because I felt really strongly that at that point in time, I wanted to do something like that. So, instead of joining a TCS or an Infosys where I had offers from, I decided to join Yodlee, which was a relatively less known startup. So I took that risk early on in my career. And I'm really glad I did that because I spent the most formative years of my career at Yodlee. I spent 7.5 years in that company. I got an opportunity to work in two countries. I started in India and then I moved to the US. And it is where I learned a lot of different ropes of my job. So I started as a quality engineer and a test analyst, which was a very stark difference from my role as a consultant in my previous job, and then as my role as a startup founder. But I took this on because that's all I got at that point in time. And then I gradually worked my way into doing things within my current role and, grow from there. So I remember in my early days at Yodlee, when I was a QA engineer, I told my manager back then that I wanted to do more. And she asked me, she's like, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know, but I just want to do something more than what I'm doing right now because I don't think I'm utilizing my potential to the fullest. And she's like, okay. So she used to work on this utilization report that took a lot of her time. And that was, she ran along like a large team, and she had to send this report to the top management about, how the projects were progressing, what kind of utilization were we seeing. It was a very data heavy report. And I had never worked on something like that. So she asked me if that is something that I could take off her hands. I jumped at it. I said, you know what? I will do it. I had no idea on how I was going to do it, but I decided to do it. And initially, in the first few weeks after I took it on, I had this point of, like just this thought as to what did I take on, right? Like it was not something I had ever done before. I had no background in data analytics. I did not know, how we were extracting that data, what kind of, decks need to make out of that, how do I analyze and dig deep into it. But I decided to take it on because I thought that it would give me a chance to learn something more, and I took that on. She spent some time in the first few weeks trying to explain to me how she did her process. And once I got a hang of it, over time I started giving her suggestions on how we could improve the report, and how we could add more data into it. And I ended up being this value add to my manager, which led her to trust me with more and more projects in my career. So which takes me to the point of the fact that one needs to take charge of your career. Sometimes you may think that, okay, I'm probably not in a job that I enjoy so much, or probably I'm not like I really want to be a program manager, or I really want to be a product manager. But sometimes you don't get to it right away. So it's okay to find ways to make things work, find ways to pick up projects that can help you to get to the destination that you want to. Always have a hip pocket skill. This is something I learned many years ago. I was reading an interview by Indra Nooyi, a leader who I really follow, and she had mentioned that one thing that is super important for anyone and everyone to do is have a hip pocket skill. And what that skill is, that that is what you're the best at, right? Like if given an opportunity, or if a question arises on who can do this the best, you should be that person. And it does not come overnight. It takes a while. It takes a while for you to even figure out what your hip pocket skill is. And it took me a while to figure out what my hip pocket skill was, which was I get stuff done. So over time in my career, I built a reputation that no matter what you give to Richa, even if she knows nothing about it, she will make it happen and she will get it done. And it sounds pretty simple, but there is a lot of nuances, and it is not something that has come overnight to me. I have worked on it because that's something that I personally enjoy doing. So with that, let's dive into what product management as a career is. I wouldn't dive a lot into the nuances of product management, or what different kind of product managers are. I'm sure there have been maybe that's something that's a separate conversation because it's pretty long. But just as a high level, product management is a very it's a very varied field. You get to play a lot of roles. You get to wear a lot of hats as a product manager. It's a combination of technical and soft skills. So you need to have certain amount of business competence and industry experience. You need to be an expert in the domain, and some of those things come naturally. But you also need to have a bunch of soft skills, which you do not quite learn in a school. Some of them are inherent, and some of them you build on. Product managers come from varied backgrounds. In my career, I've met some of the best PMs that have come from the design background. They have such a strong focus on design that makes them build very, very user-centric products. I've had a pleasure of working with some product managers who come from a marketing background, and they are brilliant storytellers. The kind of vision they paint for the products that they want to build is amazing. I've worked with some of the most technically sound product managers who know in and out of a system, and that is something that is their superpower. So one doesn't get into product management. Sometimes people get into product management right out of college, but sometimes there are industry hires that have had a lot of experience in several domains before they decide to move into product management. So it's a very interesting field. Anyone who wants to be a product manager and wants to take certain steps to make it happen can be a PM. So you don't necessarily have to fit a mold to become one. There are lots of different types of PMs. There are growth PMs, there are technical PMs, there are analytical, consumer, enterprise, but we wouldn't get into it. But I just put it out here just to make you understand that there's not one path to building products. There are consumer products, there are enterprise products. The product management at a broad level, the skills are the same, but there are the techniques that you apply to build products in these domains are very different. But with that, the one theme that is the most common for any and every product manager is that you need to be ruthlessly focused on your customer or your user. There are these different terms for it. Who's your user, who's your customer. You're building a product for someone, you need to be hyper focused on what their requirements are. And that is what, in my opinion, differentiates a good PM from a not so good PM, because you should always have a pulse of what your users and your customers are looking for, and you should always try and build things that they need, and sometimes they don't know that they need, right? And Apple is a great example. Before the iPhones came about, people did not know that their phones could do so much, and over time everyone has followed suit. We have this plethora of smartphones that are doing things that 10 years ago we couldn't think that phones would do. So it is incredible, and that kind of talks a lot about the vision that PMs have for the future. So you need to be very future thinking as well. Right. Cool. So with that, let's talk a little bit about the skills, which I touched upon earlier. So as I alluded to before, it's never a straightforward path. It's never something that you can build overnight. But being a product manager takes a lot of skills that you need to juggle and you need to prioritize, and sometimes one skill takes over the other. So when it comes, and at this point, your introspection comes into play. What are some of the things that you're really good at, and what are some of the things that you're not so good at, and what are those things that you can build on. PMs are not expert at everything. You don't have to be the best of a developer and a user researcher and a product designer and a marketer and a sales executive to be a stellar product manager. No, because you cannot be. There are people who are in these roles and who do a stellar job of doing that. But PMs need to be the experts of bringing these people together and convince them to build the product that you want to build. And that's where your solid leadership and influence skills of influencing come into play. Strong PMs add greatly to their engineering teams. They can credibly push back on engineering estimates because they know where their team is undercommitted or overcommitted, right? Or they've overscoped a project feature. They can differentiate good bugs from bad bugs. Sometimes PMs have to play the role of a triager. You go ahead and triage all these thousands of bugs that are sitting on your product, but you know your product and your domain so well that you're able to distinguish and prioritize, and but at the same time you need to understand what your engineers are working on, and you need to have some sort of engineering skills, a deep domain knowledge of the product's technical architecture. That doesn't mean that you need to write lines of codes. If you can, yes, but if you can't, but if you really strongly understand your product and the infrastructure behind it, and then understand and hold a conversation with your engineer and understand what they're trying to build on and what are the struggles they have, it's a great skill to have. Market and internet trends, right? So those are important. Strong PMs are plugged into software news or hardware news or industry news in general. They adopt new products. They understand about the startups that are failing or succeeding. They engage with the market. They engage with user research. That's one of the functions that's not really talked about, but user research is so important. So strong PMs, lean into that, understand what users are saying, looking into the trends. They read about rising consumer trends and understand how those trends can affect their product in the short term and the long term. So essentially, it's not just running a product. Think about it. It's really running a business, and you really are responsible for this little product that you're trying to build, and you need to guard it with everything that you have. With that, not all products succeed. So PMs also need to always prioritize on things that need to happen or things that need to be done. A good PM is concise. They pack a lot of information, a lot of detail into brief emails and documents and presentations. And that is where your communication power comes into play. I cannot emphasize on it enough, but a good PM needs to be a solid executor. You need to have a little nerve, which I say, in your head that tells you to execute and make things happen. It's one thing to visualize how you would build a certain product, but the second art is actually making it land. And that is where a PM needs to be a solid executor. Um, uh, in in the companies that I have worked in the past, PMs, unless they are super senior at a director or a group product manager level, they usually do not have teams. They are usually individual contributors, but they work with a large cross-functional team, which builds into the skill of leading without authority. You do not really quite have authority over the people who you work with because you're not their manager. But you need to be influential enough, and you need to be a good communicator enough to be able to work with them and help them work with you on your mission and your vision on how you think about the product. My manager told me many years ago that, what makes a good PM, when you're a product manager, the success is everyone else's, the success of the product is everyone else's, but the failure is purely yours. And it is something that has stayed with me. So PMs take responsibility when things don't work. They try and protect their team despite having no authority over their team, right? Like, they're not really managing the team, but they focus on teamwork, and it's crucial. You need to work with so many people, so that skill is absolutely priceless. There is always ruthless prioritization. Not everything is important, but when you're a PM, you're wearing so many hats. Everything is important. You get pulled into different directions. Prioritization is key, right? So there are a lot of skills that we already have, but we don't think about, or on a day-to-day basis. But one part of trying to think about breaking into product management is figuring out, what are some of these skills that you have versus what are some of the skills that you would like to build on. And that kind of puts a perspective into, and this is only a subset of the skills that I could put in this deck together, but there is so much more. There is so much in this space that one can do and one needs to do. So it's just important to keep abreast and keep a pulse of what really you can build on. All right, so okay, so because we are not in a slideshow mode, cool. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about how can one figure out if product management is the right career for you. So I break it into 4, and that's personally what I did. Very frequently, or very often in my career, and I do this even now, I introspect. I spend a lot of time introspecting on what am I doing and why am I doing it. And it's a very old technique of the 5 whys. And it really works. I can tell you that it really works. And it's funny because I have a 2.5-year-old, and very recently he has started asking whys. And his questions don't stop just because I've given him an answer. So he goes whys and why and why and why and why, and he stops when he probably is satisfied with that answer. And there is so much to learn from children in that aspect, right? Like, at some point in our lives, we forget to ask. We stop asking asking ourselves the whys. And I believe that they are very important. So introspect. Why do you want to be a product manager? Why do you not want to be in the role that you're doing, right? And it may be a strong statement, but why is it that you want to move into product management? And then keep asking those whys, like you're peeling an onion, a layer of an onion, and just figure out the answer really deep within as to why do you really want to do that. In my case, why I did that, because always, whenever I was doing something, I always thought about how I would build it, right? Like, if I was sitting in my project meetings, or if I was sitting in my product meetings when I was at Yodlee, or when I was in my early days at at Google, I always had it in my back of the mind running. How would I build this? How would I make this land? How would I envision this product? So it has always been a recurring thought in my career. Like when I had my own startup, I had this vision about how I wanted to build a product. So for me, it has been very organic. It has not something that I woke up with it overnight, or oh my god, that tomorrow I want to be a product manager and I take steps towards it. Over the course of my career, over the roles that I have played, it has been a consistent theme. And every time I've reflected back, I've realized that I have naturally been more inclined towards projects or things that give me an opportunity to build, and that gives me a sense of satisfaction that nothing else does. So that's how I identified, and through introspection, on where is it that I want to take my career. The next step is understanding, right? Like talking to PMs, asking them about their work, the challenges they face, the insights that they have, what makes them successful, why are they doing what they are doing. That is super important. It's important to know about other people's journeys as well. They may not match yours, but it gives you a perspective into how people have built their careers. So I did that a lot. I still do that a lot. If I happen to have a lot of conversations with people, and I understand what are their motivations behind what they do. If somebody is working as a enterprise product manager, what excites them about enterprise products? Or if somebody is working on a daydream or a moonshot sort of a project, what excites them to work on something like that? There are people who I have known who have moved from product management into different industry functions. So what have been their motivations of doing that? Because for me, this was a career that I wanted to build, but for a lot of people I know, this was not a career that they wanted to build, and then they moved into doing something else. So that kind of understanding of people's motivations, and then aligning them with what are your motivations, kind of help you self-reflect. And the next step is evaluate. So once you've introspected, once you've understood, what and how you're going to make things happen, the next thing is where a lot of, it's the crux of the situation, right? You evaluate. When do you make that switch? What are your opportunities and what are your constraints, right? It's not like you're going to wake up one day and you would decide that, hey, from today onwards, I will start building products. I wish it happened like that, but it does not. I mean, for some people it may, but it did not happen to me. So I had to think a lot about, what are my opportunities? What are my constraints? When and how am I going to make things happen? And a large part of it, was factored in by the feedback that I got. So, at every stage of my job and my career, I would go to my peers and my manager and ask them about how I was doing. It was really important for me to understand that, I was not living in this utopian world on what were some of my strengths and what were some of the weaknesses that I needed to work on. So getting that feedback kind of helps you. So it's a very simple foundation, but it works. So you introspect, you understand, you evaluate, and at every step of the way, you get feedback. With that, let's move into what are some of the things that you can really do. So, alluding to what I said before, define your goals. Figure out what you really, really want to do. Not today, but probably 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line, and work backwards from there and figure out how are you going to get to what you want to do. Number 2, build expertise. You got to be really good at what you're doing right now. That helps you build trust. That helps from other people. That helps you build trust. If you're really good at what you do, people will give you more stretch opportunities, or you can ask for more stretch opportunities, and you have your small wins to talk about, that hey, this is what I'm really good at, and then use that solid expertise to segue or grow into the next thing that you want to do in your career. Pocket small wins. It's super important. A lot of the times we are very bogged down about the bigger things that we want to do. So we do not think of, these small projects or these small opportunities that, that can pave the path for things that you can do. um, for example, the project that I talked about, like, I was a QA engineer, and I started working on that data report, right? It made, like, if you look at it from a very objective or a 5,000, like maybe a very objective in-person point of view, be like, why is a QA engineer working on a data analytics report? I mean, there's no correlation. Why is she doing that? I mean, it's a management reporting. I mean, it's more of an analyst job. Why am I doing that? Or it's more of a management job. Why was I doing that? But I picked that on, and that was something that gave me so much confidence on things that I don't know about, and then how I can learn, and that continued to become a foundation of how I still approach all my projects. So always pocket small wins. You may not always succeed in doing that, but they always teach you something. Taking risks. I cannot emphasize enough on the value of taking risks, and risks come in varied forms. It doesn't always necessarily mean that you need to leave your job and start a startup. I did. It didn't pay me. But sometimes taking risks, like taking a slightly non-conventional path, can pave the way for things that you may not think of at that point in time. So it's important. Sometimes, changing career directions where you're doing really well or you think you're doing really well in your career, purely because your passion lies elsewhere, it's okay to do that. But with everything, I think it goes back to my point number 2 on building expertise. One needs to execute, no matter what you're doing. Execution is the crux of a solid career. Or no matter you're a program manager or you're a product manager or you're an engineer or you're a sales professional or you're a marketing professional, you're given a task, you need to execute on that, and getting stuff done will take you a long way, no matter what career function you're in. And last, you got to be patient. Not everyone has the same career path as yours. Not everyone has the same journey as yours, and sometimes things take a lot of time to materialize. There are a lot of failures that come in the way, but it's okay. Everything will teach you something that maybe at that point in time you will not realize. But when you reflect or when you introspect, you'd be able to get a sense of why certain things happen. I'm a huge fan of Steve Jobs, and there are a lot of things that he said that have resonated with me. But this one line about connecting the dots is something that I literally swear by. Every time things are not going well, every time things are going super well, I always go back to this. You cannot connect the dots looking forward. You can always connect them looking backwards. And now when I look back into my career, of starting out as a consultant, moving in, like failing at my startup, joining a very unknown company and spending 7.5 years in there, moving countries, joining Google, starting my nonprofit. Everything looks like a path, but when I was in there, it did not make any sense. There were times during my first few years at Yodlee where all of my friends who were in Infosys and TCS, they were doing a lot of really interesting things. They were traveling the world and on projects, and I wasn't getting a chance to do that. And I was like, what am I doing? What is this that why am I not there? But those thoughts occurred to me occasionally. But then I always reflected back on the fact that I was really enjoying the work that I was doing so much that nothing else mattered. And when I look back now, that has been a journey that I wouldn't change. I've absolutely thoroughly enjoyed every step that I have had in my career, and I'm sure that when I look back at my journey 5 years from now, I will probably also feel the same, because when you're in the moment, you don't quite understand, the the impact certain actions or certain decisions or certain situations in your life will have, or on your career. But when you look back, things always make sense, or things always happen for a reason. So with that, I want to spend some time talking about my journey of breaking into product management. So it's very high level, and then we can cover some of it in Q&A if you have more specific questions. So alluding to the point before, I started. So when I started at Yodlee, I was a quality engineer, and then gradually I moved into program management. And even then, I always picked up projects that kept me closer to product, the function as a product, because I always, like, when I look back, I realized that I always had a voice on on the product management function, or I always had questions around why we were building certain features versus why we were not building certain features. And I always realized that I had a natural affinity towards projects like that. So I picked on those projects, and I built credibility on that. So I led these projects. They were super big, key initiatives. And then I executed on them so well that I got more projects, and then once I built that credibility, I could ask for more. And initially my projects were not as fun, but I did such a good job of executing on them that I got more stretch goals. I did the same at Google. So when I joined Google, I joined as a program manager, and again, I was always very inclined into projects that led program managers to be closer to the product function. And Google is a very interesting company in the fact that the no two teams function in the same way. So the program management function on my team is very different from program management function on, say, the search team. But I picked projects where I knew that I got a chance to be closer to product, and pick on some projects that would give me a flavor of product management. So I did that at Yodlee. I did that at Google as well. And Google is where I finally made my switch into product management. So I also looked into some 20% projects. So now again, like alluding to Google is a very interesting company in the sense that people are given like 20% of the time. You can pick a project that you want to work on. So this is not the 20% project that I'm talking about. I'm actually talking about, there are projects who need help, or when you through my network, or people I knew, I heard about the challenges they were facing, or they were short on bandwidth, and I was like, I'll do it. Can I help? So I always had my hand out, like, can I help you in this project? And I picked up projects that my PMs were finding hard to find time for, or they needed help with. I picked them up and I ran with them, and that tied back into building credibility, because now I had picked on these product management projects and I had made certain launches happen. So my PMs trusted me more. They're like, yeah, I think maybe Richa can do this another project. Why not we give it to her? So when we had these quarterly planning, I would pick on these smallish projects, which did not take 100% of my time, because I still needed to do a very good job of my core function, which was a program manager. But I picked on these projects and I ran with them. And that helped me build credibility. So that little circle of, building credibility, asking for more, and then delivering on it, and then building credibility, helped me also find people who then became sponsors of my work, because they trusted the work that I was doing. So now, through my work and through the credibility that I had built and through the mentors I reached out to. So I did not do this all by myself. It's not like I had these superpowers. So I spoke a lot to people whose career journeys really fascinated me, or some of the senior leads in both Yodlee and at Google. I just would approach them. I would send them an email. I would send them a message and said, hey, can I meet you for coffee? And almost always, no one said no. Nobody has ever refused a meeting with me because I said, hey, I want some career advice. People are really good about that. So, and a lot of us don't do that. People hold back in asking for advice because they're like, oh my God, they might just say no. Well, that's the worst that will happen. If you didn't ask, the answer is no anyway, right? So my mantra has always been ask, because the worst that can happen is a no, and which is fine. And So, like through my circle of mentors, through my credibility and the projects that I delivered on, I earned sponsors. And again, mentors and sponsors is a very big topic on its own, but I highly encourage everyone here to look into what mentors are and what sponsors are. Mentors help you understand or take decisions, or they help you with some of the career decisions or some of the project and product decisions that you want to take. They give you advice, and you can have a lot of mentors. Like, you can reach out to people, ask for advice, and over time you can build that mentor-mentee relationship. You cannot go out to a person and tell them to be your sponsor. Unfortunately, sponsors are something that you earn, and you earn them through the credibility that you build through your work, and you earn them through the trust they have in your abilities to deliver on things. And I cannot emphasize enough on the power of sponsors, because they are your invisible supporters who will find you projects which you otherwise wouldn't be able to, because they have far more visibility. And these are mostly the people who are at senior leadership levels, who have more visibility into the overall organization structure and some of the bigger strategy planning meetings. And these are the people who give a little nudge and say, I think she can do this. And that is enough. That is a huge credibility that that puts you forward, and that's something that you earn no matter what you do. Your work, your execution, your power of delivering on your projects will earn you sponsors. So do a really good job of what you're doing, and you will see that you will. Sometimes you don't even know that you will have a sponsor, but if we do a good job of what we're doing, we will probably always have one or two sponsors who are willing to bet on us and say that, oh my God, I think this person can do the job that we are talking about right now. Let her do this. In my case, at Google, we have at different levels, different depending on where you are in your career, there are different rotation programs. So there is an APM program which is pretty coveted, and it's for people who are right out of college who can apply to this associate product management program. It's a 2-year program, and then you can where you're literally groomed to be a product manager and a world-class product manager. You work across in 2 different years, you work across 2 different product areas, and you build expertise. Unfortunately, that was not a path for me, because I was several years into industry, so that didn't work out for me. But I picked on something which is called as a PM rotation. And a lot of my friends in different companies like Facebook, Apple, LinkedIn have talked about having these formal or informal, even PayPal for that matter, have talked about having these formal or informal PM rotation programs, which is where you're hired as a product manager. You're made to pick on and deliver on projects as if you were a product manager owning that project. And sometimes it's more formal, like it is defined at Google, but sometimes it is not so formal. I know like a lot of people in Yodlee who moved from different job functions into product management by picking on these 20% projects and executing on them. So in my case, I had the opportunity to get a PM rotation, and it was a career risk for me. I was on a very upward trajectory in my program management role, but I decided to do this because I really wanted to make this happen. And I took that risk of getting into a rotation program, getting out of my ladder, like my job ladder, and actually going into something absolutely unknown. And I spent 100% of my time doing that. Sometimes, you don't want to do that, and you can pick on like a 50% or a 20% of your time or a 30% of your time, and you can build a bunch of those little projects that can give you the credibility of someone who has built a product or built a feature. It can be anything, and these accumulated over time can actually become a portfolio. And last but not the least, I worked really hard. There is all sorts of work that you can do, but there is absolutely no substitute for hard work. So when I decided that I wanted to make this happen, I worked really hard at it, maybe sometimes double as hard, because I was traditionally not a product manager. I thought that I had a great product sense, and I met a bunch of skills that on paper needed to be met for that. But when I got into it full time, I realized that there are a lot of things I did not know. They were like there were a lot of things that look pretty glorified. It looks like a very glorified job function, but there's still a lot of grunt work that I did not know about. I spent hours doing analysis because I needed to figure out the right path you want to take my product. And it was not a light bulb moment. It took analysis. Like I needed to sit down, be chained at my computer for hours and days and weeks to look into the trends, to figure out the pattern. And those were some things that I understood as I got into this full time, that there is a lot of work involved, and when you've not done this all your life, it becomes double as hard to do that. So with that, let's talk about some of the things strategically and tactically that you can do to build a career into product management. So strategically, like I said, look back, connect the dots, build a story on, what makes you a product manager, expand your network. Sometimes projects come not formally, but, about people. Sometimes job recs are not even posted, or project recs are not even posted. But, if you know enough people, they'll probably tell you about certain teams or certain projects who are looking for help, and you can go and approach them and say that, hey, I want to do that. Find your mentors. Each of us has so much to learn from people, so we should never discount on the experience that we can get from our fellow co-workers or our teachers or our people who have been in the industry for so long, and earn sponsors. That comes from the work that you do. Take on more stretch projects. That is something that is totally on someone, right? Like you should go beyond your comfort level and pick on projects that totally scare you, and then get them done. And the kind of joy you will get out of doing that is unparalleled. So I highly recommend people take stretch projects. Tactical. I think the most practical thing to do is that you can start at your own company or team. I highly recommend that you limit your variables to 2. So, you shouldn't change too many things in one go. So if you decide that you want to move into product management, the easiest way to do this is in the current organization or in the current team, talk to your manager, talk to your manager's manager, make them aware that, this is something that you want to do. And, make them aware over and over and over again. Sometimes people hear it once and they may forget about it. But if you're persistent about wanting to do this, make sure people hear about that. Look into rotation programs. Some companies have formal rotation programs, 20% PM opportunities. Sometimes there are non-structured opportunities. This other team in your company has product managers who are working on something. Go ask them, hey guys, do you need help? I can help. Pick on those projects and then deliver on them. Talk to your engineers and cross-functional partners. Sometimes we discount, sometimes we're so bogged down by, talking to leadership, and only managers know about certain things, or, directors or VPs will know about certain things. A lot of times your cross-functional partners, your engineers will tell you that, hey, this project needs help. Do it unofficially or do it like informally, and, just help them, that's fine, and that I have done that a lot and I continue to do that. So there is not much you will lose out of doing that, except you'd have to spend some time on it, but it's totally worth it. Audit your skills and work on the skills that you're missing. It's very important, and it's not a one-time exercise. One should do it over and over again. I do it every 6 months to 1 year. I reflect on, hey, okay, so what did I learn this year, and what are some of the things I struggled with, and how can I get better in that? And it's an ongoing process. So auditing your skills is super important. Find your hip pocket skill, build on it. Become really good at this one thing that becomes your superpower, and build a breadth of knowledge and skills and expertise over different domains. But pick those 1 or 2 things that are your superpowers, and you're confident that you can be the best at that. And prepare. Interviews matter a lot, right? So in the next slide, I've linked some materials that I personally used for my interviews, and for my preparation into like the formal product management role. But preparation matters. So read a lot, interview, prepare for your interviews, uh, give mock interviews. So go out to your product manager and tell them, hey, can you interview me as a product manager? I did that with so many PMs. Like I reached out to them, but I made sure that I was prepared, and I was not wasting their time. But reach out to them, ask them to take a mock interview, and just prepare. And then there are some resources, but let's not get into that. I know we're already on time, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hi Richa, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hello.
Hi, I'm Kavya. I am pursuing my MBA. I'm in the final year. I recently interned with Microsoft as a program manager. So I had a twofold question for you. One of the challenges I faced there was with prioritization. I was able to get the other things well because as you practice, you get better. But what are the things I can do, considering that I'm not really working on something right now, to actually develop the skills like a prioritization thing? I learned about few frameworks like Moscow and others, but then without really applying, how can I get better at that? I mean, so any advice with respect to that? Because you said ruthless prioritization is one of the very important factors here.
Yeah, and that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. I think, all these things that you read in the book, they can provide you books or blogs. They can provide you with the fundamentals of, or like a structure of things you can do. But honestly, every project is so different that one size fits all approach may or may not work. So prioritization is an art, more than a skill. I think you need to. How I make it happen is, I look 5 steps ahead and I work backwards from there. Like in order for me to, what's our final goal? Like what is the final goal that I want to get that? And what are the things that will get me to that final goal, and final goal for the project I'm talking about? So if my goal for this quarter is to launch a pilot, then what are the things that I need to focus on making sure that that pilot gets launched, right? But when you're doing project prioritization, there are a lot of additional things that are good to have. Or that come up, and everybody thinks that it's super important. But when you look into your end goal and you work backwards from there, prioritization becomes easy. I recommend to try it out. Pick one of your projects that you've done in the past as you were an intern, and just break it down into time roadmaps, like maybe quarterly or monthly, or every 6 months. I don't know the cycles you follow at Google. We do quarterly planning, and then see, like for you to be able to launch something in a quarter, or like even if it was a feature launch or a full project launch, how would you work backwards from there? And what are the things that you need to get done? So when you look at it on a project that has already launched, it'll give you a sense of, oh yeah, we could have omitted this at this point and this could still have been done later. And the ruthless prioritization also comes from the point that what is good for your customer. Who are you building this for? Are you building it for your salespeople? Are you building it for your marketing people? Or are you building it for your end user? You're always building it for your end users. So that will kind of help you cut the noise on, who are you building this for?
Okay. Thank you so much. And if I have time, can I ask another question? Can I ask another question if time permits? Yeah, okay.
And I'm happy to stay on a little longer, so that's fine.
Yeah. So because of my internship, I was exposed to this whole PM domain, after which I really want to break into that. So I'm doing online courses, and I'm trying to, look at different products and interpret that as a customer. What are the things I like? What are the things I do not like? So can you tell me about the basic expectations which a company has when they come to recruit for, a product manager role when in colleges, like fresh grads?
Yes and no. I haven't recruited fresh grads, so I've mostly worked with people who are the industry hires. But I think it should be, the product manager role. And again, I mean, if you're talking about companies like Microsoft or LinkedIn or Facebook or Google for that matter, there are 2 parts, like I mentioned earlier, right? You either get into that APM program where you're less than 3 years of industry experience, and you can get into that, and that's one path you can take. And and at least at Google, people do that a lot. And otherwise, it's more of an industry hire. But if you're not an APM, or if you don't get into an APM program because those spaces are limited, I think for product management hiring, I think some of the things that I look for is product sense and understanding, how you would approach a problem. So standard questions could be something like, what's your favorite product and why? What is your not so favorite product and why? And, looking at your structured thinking and, how you approach a problem. A lot of the one interesting insight there is that, there are never right and wrong answers, right? So, it's why you like a certain product may be very different from why I like a certain product. That doesn't mean that your approach is wrong and mine is right, or vice versa. But what are your reasonings for it, and how you think about a product as a consumer and and how you can strategize on building it to make sure that it has a market fit is something that companies look for when they're hiring product managers. I think in terms of more of a industry, like from right out of college, I think some of the things that might matter is your internship projects, because in that you can talk about some of the projects that you worked on or the products that you worked on and the launches that you made happen, and a story around that will help you build. That is something that will help you. But in the end, it's always about how you think about products, building products, be it consumer or enterprise. And this book, which is Cracking the PM Interview, I think it should be super helpful even for you. You can look into the types of questions that people get asked when they're preparing for when they're getting interviewed for product management.
Yes, I'm actually going through the PM interview preparation. The 3 sources you've mentioned, I'm actually regularly doing that. But at this point of time, because I've not been exposed to a lot of interviews, I was really skeptical as to my level of preparedness, if I'm prepared or not. So that is why I wanted to ask you this question. Thank you so much for this session. I cannot begin to thank you because you clarified a lot of doubts which I had. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey Richa, Sanjna here.
Hi.
Hi. So Richa, I'm an undergrad who does not have the technical knowledge, but I was hired for the product team soon after I graduated. So right now, just so that we get an understanding of the product, we have been put into the operations team. And because I do not have prior knowledge about technology and the technical stuff, I'm guessing that my focus should be majorly on the UX part of it. Would that help me to go further in careers?
Focusing on UX is important. I cannot emphasize enough on how important user experience is, because we build products for our users. But that said, if you're in a product analyst role, did I get that right? Are you a product analyst in your current role?
No. Right now,
or product ops?
We are working with client-based projects. So we look at digitizing a process like lending, for example. It's a fintech. So our product is majorly based on low code. So we look at constructing something using all these BPMN models and such. So right now I'm in the ops team, and even now the emphasis given on the technical part is lesser.
So I think product ops, we have that job function here as well. So I kind of have an understanding of what the product ops operations team does. And a large part, I believe, is, getting things done and executing on it, right? So you're executing on projects and, you're making them happen. You're talking to your customers and, you're just ensuring that your project launches or, your launches are on time and you plan that. I think you should continue to build on that. But that said, if you've recently joined, there is no harm in, there is no harm is a wrong statement. There is only benefits of becoming more technical. I cannot emphasize enough, on understanding your product's technical architecture, it is very important. So if yeah, and there are a lot of you don't have to go into really like technical courses, etc. There is enough and more information on the internet, on YouTube. In fact, I know there is a channel on YouTube which I can probably put here, which actually synthesizes the system design in such simple terms that I highly recommend that everyone should do that, because yes, it's a like, if you want to become a product manager, you would have to deal with a lot of technical people, and having a hold on that aspect will only take you further. That doesn't mean that it will come overnight. You can gradually build on that, but I would recommend that you spend some time building on your technical skills. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to write lines of code. If you can, that's great. But if you can't, even then, if you understand system design really well and how data functions or how system architecture works, that will give you a lot of immense credibility as a product manager as well.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And I think I would like to reiterate on one of so many questions I see here on the conversation. It's about how important is MBA for a product manager or someone who's entering. Does it really matter?
No, it doesn't. And then I'm not discounting that MBAs are not useful. I myself got one, but I got one because my company sponsored it for me. I would probably not be able to afford one myself at that time. But I have seen fantastic PMs who come from business schools, and I have seen fantastic PMs who have never gone to a business school. So if you're doing an MBA, it's great. Learn all the skills that you can, because it's an opportunity that not everyone gets. But if you don't have an MBA and you don't think that you can get to doing an MBA, it's okay. There is still so much you can learn. So it's not really a must-have to become a product manager. What is a must-have to become a product manager is the skills that you bring to the table.
Thank you so much, Richa. That answered most of my questions. And for a beginner like me, it surely helps. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Richa?
Hi.
Hi.
Going ahead.
Hey Atul, you can go ahead. I can hear you.
Yeah. Hi. Just to give a brief background, I am from a technical background. I have like close to 8 years of experience as a technical guy. I recently started leading my technical team and moving towards the product development. And I have got an opportunity to work as a product manager for a B2B company, which is into the fintech domain. Just wanted to, because all of my companies and the products I have worked as a technical guy and as a lead were into the B2C domain. So just wanted to understand if there is any specific skill set or things I need to take care of while working for a B2B product. Like what could be the difference between managing both of these different products, B2B and B2C?
One very obvious difference is in B2B, your customer, your users are actually other companies, right? Like there'll be other businesses who will be using the product that you build. So sometimes getting that user feedback becomes a bit of a challenge. But that said, there are so many good product managers working in B2B companies. But I think that's one thing, right? Like you're not building for consumers versus you're building for certain companies who then have consumers. So your consumers are like 2 steps away from you, right? Like your customers are that. So that's one difference. And I have worked in both B2B and B2C. I think the generic product management skills pretty much stay the same. I think you need to change the way you're going to get user feedback, or sometimes in B2B, at least in my experience, and that could be very different from other B2B companies. So I don't speak for all of them, but sometimes the feature development in a B2B company takes slightly longer than compared to in a B2C company, purely because you have multiple enterprise customers or business customers who may have very varied requirements. So synthesizing them into common requirements can become a challenge. So or it can take longer. So that's one very high level difference that I see between B2B and B2C product management. I think you don't quite know who your customers are. You don't quite know who your users are.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But that said, you should definitely talk. Whether you should take that opportunity or not is totally your call. But you should definitely, and this is, I think, a universal truth. I think if you're given an opportunity, you should always ask for what is expected of you, and talk to people who are in that current role, who will give you a better visibility into what are some of the challenges that they face and how have they overcome it. And the challenges could be building the product or launching the product, or even general dynamic changes. I think talking to people who are in that space is absolutely okay. We don't do that often when we are given job opportunities, but I think it's totally okay to reach out to people. I think LinkedIn is so good now, which gives you a platform to just reach out to people. So I think you should ask those questions also to them on what are some of the things that they are doing, and then map it to what has been your experience and figure out what that difference is. Are you okay with working for customers versus end users? I mean, there some people thrive on that, some people don't, and some people don't care. So I think it's a function of what you really want to do.
Okay, all right, understood. We'll definitely try to speak to more people on this.
Hi Richa.
Hi.
Am I audible? This is Jayantan from Bangalore.
Hi, Jayantan.
Yeah, hi. It was a nice session for me because it gave me a lot of knowledge about it. So let me get back straight to the question. And I have 9 years of experience in the consumer domain. So basically, I worked in ITC, LG, Nestle. So basically, I was in the sales and the trade role. After that, I took a year break for starting up on my own. I mean, just worked on an idea. I mean, sales. I mean, kind of a sales automation app idea application. It was an app. But we had to close it down because of the financials. So during that time, I did a course in analytics as well. Business analytics. R, Python 1 year. So, but after this year, I again got back. Right now, I'm in Ola. So again, back to the same domain of marketing. That is into the the consumer marketing role, the trade role. So right now, the thing which I want the question is, since I got an experience of B2C, the consumer side, not in the B2B. So I thought of let me get into the product management with the B2C side. So when I saw the company in Ola itself, they are hiring from IITs and IIMs for the APM role or a PM role. So I have completed my MBA, but still to get into this role, could you just give me a small glimpse on how to get into this, how to build the expertise kind of background of mine? I know it's a little bit long, kind of complicated because of my connecting the dots back. So could you just give me an idea of what I can do if I want to get into product management? Since I kind of like the role which not too much of technical, but again not too much of more to the business side of it. So thanks.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I would start by, again, if I were you, I would start by asking myself, why do I want to be a product management? Not because I want to have a role which is a mix of technical and business. I mean, that's a very high level, a lot of roles are a mix of technical and business aspect. Like a program manager has a solid, and sometimes the lines between a program and a product management are so thin that it's confusing. Like in Microsoft, program managers are product managers. So if I were you, I would start by asking that question, that 5 whys. Why do I want to be a product manager? It's super important you do that and get to the crux of why is it that you want to be a product manager, and why not a program manager or a business analyst? Because these roles are similar to the intersection of or a product specialist. There are all these roles. Like why would you not want to do that, and why do you want to be a product manager? And that's not because I'm discouraging you from trying to get into product management. I want to move into product management for the right reasons, because you want to do it. Once you have that nailed out, and once your answer is still a resounding yes, that product management is the career for me, and trust me, it is okay that, if that answer is also not a resounding yes, but if you have a vague idea that no, I still want to do this, I would start by talking to people in Ola, your other team members, or talking to some senior product managers, and talk to them about projects that they need help on, which you can help with, and that will do two things. That will help you build credibility for other people. That will help you get a flavor of what it is like to be a product manager, and that will help you take a call on whether you want to pursue this full time. So now once you've built credibility, you can ask for more projects and you can deliver on them, and gradually you can make a path for moving into product management within Ola. I don't know how the company is structured, but I mean, my general sense is that most organizations are pretty open about people moving into different roles. At least that's what I've seen. Okay, Google is a different example, but even in my relatively small company, which was Yodlee, which is now public, but we had that flexibility that if we wanted to do something, it didn't happen overnight, but we could work towards building, moving into a career path that we really wanted to take. So I think most people, most managers, most leaders are pretty open about people succeeding in things that they really want to do. So ask yourself those questions and then reach out to people. And you'll probably have to reach out to a lot of people to get a few leads, but those few leads would be the quality ones, and then you can build on from that. I hope that helps.
Yeah, sure. That answers bang on. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Hey Richa, Shashank this side. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, hi.
Yeah, hi. So I am here. I currently work at Adobe Systems in Noida as a quality engineer, and I was looking at solutions to getting more visible in the job market rather than deciding on to whether I am fit for product management or should I take product management. Let's assume that all those things are sorted by now. I have interviewed at certain places. I also completed my MBA from IIM Lucknow. It was also sponsored by Adobe. So I am still facing some difficulties in getting calls for product management role because the companies are asking for prior experience in product management. I was thinking about building few small but little functional products on my own as a personal project and publish them somewhere. What would you like to say about this idea, and does it actually count? Does it give any assurance to the recruiter or the interviewer if it is presented that way?
Yes, it's a brilliant idea. You should totally pursue it. If you have the drive to want to blog or create things, you should totally go ahead and do that. A lot of us are big consumers and we don't think about creating much, but creation is super important. That already talks about your drive to want to build something. That said, you should totally pursue that. And if you're at Adobe, I think Adobe, you should figure out if there's a way within Adobe you can move into a product management role. I mean, that usually is way easier because you have people know you have work, you've proven work record, and that becomes relatively easy. I've seen sometimes people, and this is where I think the taking risks come into play, that if you're really certain that you want to get into product management, sometimes people take career hits, like in the sense that they would start from, I wouldn't say start from scratch, but they would start at a slightly lower level, like than they were in their current company, because they are changing career ladders. So people have done that. I've seen them become really successful because if you're really good at what you do, you would end up rising up the ranks again very soon. So I think it's a function of where you are personally and what do you want to do. But no matter what you do, please do write and please do create things, and it will only help you.
Thanks, Richa. Thanks so much. I would certainly do that now.
Yeah, and share the link. I would love to
Sure.
see your blog. Yeah.
Thanks.
Hi, Richa.
Hey, hi Rohan.
Yeah. So just to give you a quick context, so I used to be a corporate lawyer, and I now lead the business team at a drone technology startup. But I was interested in, so now we just started building out a couple of drone-based data softwares. So just given that, I have absolutely no technical background or coding skills, what do you recommend would be the first steps that I take to, be taken seriously in the product field? And what are the key challenges that I should be addressing to be taken seriously, by developers and engineers?
Um, Sorry. So you're saying that you are currently in a startup, and what's your role again?
So I lead the business team at a drone
Okay.
technology startup.
Okay, so you're on the business side. So are you on the business development side?
Correct.
Okay, cool. I think building credibility with engineers or other members of the team is an organic process. And it starts by asking questions, so you should ask questions, and you should become a student. Honestly, every time I have joined a new team or a new company, I have really become a student, and I ask questions, and I tell them that, hey, I'm going to ask a lot of questions. So do that, because that does two things. It helps you learn, and you're going to be able to find resources that you otherwise wouldn't. Your engineers would have way more information into the technology stack or the infrastructure or the historical, like the reasons for why they've built the product in a certain way. So go and ask them those questions. Set up one-on-one time and tell them to give you like a knowledge transfer. Tell them that, hey, I'm just more interested in learning about this technically. Can you give me like a 10,000 feet view of why we are doing this, and then can you give me a slightly more technical understanding? They would love to do that. So you should go ahead and ask those questions, and then once you get that that initial information, then go back and read about that, and then you build your own understanding, and then go back to them with clarifying questions on, hey, so after our last session, this is what I learned more. Is this right? Is this wrong? What can I do more? And sometimes during that process, you will realize that you really don't want to go that technical, right? But you really want to go in a different trajectory. But you should have those conversations, and you should have those with your engineers. You should have them with your marketing folks or sales folks, or you should have them with your data scientists. A lot of times this information comes really handy in from the data science. So if you have a data scientist team who has all this analytics report, go into that, ask those questions, set up time, and then go back and read on the information that they provide to you, and then ask more clarifying questions. I think that goes a long way in building trust with your team.
All right. Thank you so much.
Hello. Hey,
Hello.
this is Sudhakar here, and I just joined the call, so I'm not sure is there a protocol, or can I go ahead and ask my question?
I don't
Yeah.
think there's a protocol, but yeah.
Okay. So I had two questions. I have around 25 years of experience, and I spent a considerable amount of time in the services industry. And for the past 5 years, I actually had two startups of my own earlier as well, and built a couple of products. And for the past 4 years, I've been actually doing strategic consulting for clients in the US and Europe. Right now, I am tired of this traveling, and I'm trying to get back into the industry where I don't have to travel. But the services industry, unfortunately, are not hiring. And so I was trying to get into smaller companies, product companies, but my resume seems to look, like a total services company, even though I have actually created products and also done kind of managed outsourced products. So any suggestion on, what skills I need to build up, or how should I project my profile? Maybe how do I, or rather, what should I focus on my resume, etc.?
Yeah. Sudhakar, you have 25 years of industry experience, so I think I have a lot to learn from you. So with that said, uh, I haven't I haven't changed a lot of jobs, honestly. So I'm not the best person to answer on, what are some of the things you need to do to build a good resume. But I think a resume that stands out. I'm sure your resume is stellar, but I think uh, uh, like when these screening processes happen, there are these certain, I think there are these certain criteria which I don't quite fully understand, like how the screening happens. But I would, and that's my recommendation. I mean, I would recommend that the companies that you're targeting, look into the profiles of the people who are in those companies and in the roles that you're specifically interested in, and then find a delta in what your resume or what your profile talks about versus what their profile looks like. And you'd probably have to do it for a few companies, a few people in those similarish companies where the kind of roles that you're looking for. And on a parallel path, I think you should reach out to your industry contacts or people who have worked with in the past, who can speak about the work that you've done, your clients through your consulting gigs, because referrals usually work really well in an industry like that, in any industry, especially in small product companies. I'm sure people will gain so much from your experience, but sometimes maybe the standard recruitment path is, because there are so many applications, sometimes good resumes get lost in that pile. So maybe just reaching out to people, and then also figuring out in parallel on what are some of the things that you can add to your resume, because I would like to believe that your services experience should actually be very helpful in a typical product company, because there's there are products as like people build software as a service. So I mean that is an industry that you can typically or think about. But yeah, I would recommend that you talk to people, and then you also look into the profiles of people in the companies that you're trying to apply for jobs in. I don't know a lot about consultants. There are people I know who help with building your resume to suit a certain skill, but I'm not quite sure. I think LinkedIn as a tool itself is amazing. I personally love that as a product. There are a lot of tools within LinkedIn that you can use to give you a sense of how you're comparing to other applicants. So if you take premium, for example, it gives you all those insights into if for this particular industry your skills are like a top 10% or a top 5%, and then reaching out to these recruiters via in-mails also helps.
Any
answers.
Thanks, Richa. So any pointers on what are this for product management? What kind of skill gap? Because what happens is, yes, the service industry actually should work, but sometimes the recruiters or the business heads, they become very myopic in saying, I need somebody who has actually managed products, using this methodology, etc. So there it appears to me, or sometimes even getting into technical details, not like programming level details, but details as to what kind of, I don't know if I'm even using the right word, like what kind of stack was used or that. So what kind of skill gap would you advise me to fill, at a very high level, generic level? I know you don't know my profile, but at a very generic level.
Yeah, so there are two parts to a job process, right? One is getting through the screening, right? And then the second part is interviews. Now, interviews is something you can control, because there is enough and more that you can talk about the products that you've built, the skills you've gained. You can say your story the way you want to, and I'm sure your experience will be really helpful in there. But I think on the screening side, and my understanding is that's where you're probably thinking that your resume doesn't cross to the hiring managers.
Right.
I think in that case, I would say look at your resume again and look into the feedback that you've received so far. Some of that could be valuable. Maybe all this information is in your resume, but that story is not coming out, right? So which is why, okay, compare it to people in product management ladder, or say program management ladder, or business analytics ladder. There are these are very valid career paths. So look into the career path that maps most with your relevant skills, and then maybe just reverse the story, or talk less from the service industry and more from the products you've led, right? Like, so it's the narrative that matters. So maybe in your resume you have all the content, but the narrative is not there, and that's why it's not getting the eyeballs that it needs. So maybe you want to revisit the narrative on your resume. And again, I know my answer is very high level because I don't quite understand your profile to be able to make very specific answers, but I think using LinkedIn as a tool might really help you, because it will tell you, for this particular company, for this particular job function, these are the top skills. The candidates who are applying to these companies have these skills. You get that level of data, which kind of gives you an understanding of where you stand. So I highly recommend you try the. I think they have a LinkedIn Premium. I think they have a free, like, they have a trial
No, I have a
period.
LinkedIn Premium account anyway, so I think.
Yeah, so use the insights part from that will also tell you the skills that the top applicants in a company that you're targeting have, and then that will help you build that delta, and then
Great.
revisit your narrative.
Thanks. I think that's very helpful. Thanks, Richa. And this is a question to Richa and maybe Piyush. Would you provide a recording of this webinar?
Yes, Sudhakar, we'll be sharing the recording of a session on the YouTube channel. So after this
Great.
session, I'll link in the description, and you can just subscribe to our YouTube channel and you'll get the recording.
Okay. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you.
I got a quick question.
Hey, hi. Couldn't quite hear you. Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, hi, this is Chetan. I am currently working for a healthcare company, HCA Healthcare. I was hired here as a senior product analyst, and currently, I've had several different conversations with some of the leadership team members. We are a healthcare company, but not quite tech company like Google, Microsoft, and so many others. So we don't really have a product structure in place, for me to advance within the product management.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, in one way, there is an opportunity to create, the product culture here that's somewhat similar to some of the tech companies. And the other option is, since there's no, solid structure within the company for product, for someone who is an aspiring product manager, maybe just look for another company where they have the product structure set up. So needed some advice if I was to, stay within this company and, somewhat like help create the product structure. If there are any suggestions, from your end based on your experience.
How long have you been in this company, Chetan?
It's been 5 months.
Okay, so you've just joined. So it's, I mean, I cannot quite advise you on, hey, this is what you should do, but what I can tell you is that there are pros and cons of both, right? Like you're in a company which presumably doesn't have this product structure. So what are some of the key roles in your company?
It's a business heavy company, so more into so we have more than 250 hospitals which are being managed by HCA Healthcare. Mm-hmm. We do have so currently I'm working on a mobile application for the patients who are going to be using any of our facilities. So currently the next phase is digital transformation for the company. So there are several opportunities, but it's heavily business driven rather than product driven.
Mm-hmm. So product managers need to be very attuned with the business. So I think in that regard, you're in a good place. So here's my take on it. And there are always going to be companies who will have product management roles when you want to take them. You've been here 5 months. I believe you have and again, without knowing your dynamics of the company and what the structure looks like, I believe you have a fair shot at giving it a chance on building a product management stream. I mean, if you have that opportunity and if you have the chance to do that, I would say you should take that, because it will help you understand and structure something that does not exist, and you're essentially building it from ground up, and that will give you a set of skills that you probably otherwise not get. So I would say that you should give it a fair shot, given that you've only been here 5 months. So it's not like you are losing a lot of time. So give it some time, and if you think after a while this is not turning out to be the way you expected it, but you need to have some patience. You need to give it time. You need to have a very structured approach. You probably need to do a research into what it takes to setting up a product management function in a company, right? Like, it's not an easy feat. It will mean that you need to have those discussions. You need to influence a lot of leadership in agreement, and I believe you've done that to an extent that you feel that you have this opportunity. So you've taken some steps. I would say complete that journey. There is only two outcomes of it. Either you'll be able to set that up, or you will not be able to set that up. But you should take the shot, given that you've only been here for a little while. And if it doesn't work, then there'll always be companies that will have product management roles, and this can actually be a project that you can talk about, that you did this, and these are some of the things that you did, and these are skills that you learned in the process, and it can be a great story.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hi, this is Siddhant.
Hi, Siddhant.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, so I'm currently an MBA student. I'm in Indore.
Mm-hmm.
And prior to this, I had like an 8-month experience in IT management team in HDFC Bank. And I'm trying to transition into product management. Mm-hmm. And my understanding is that it's sort of like a chicken and egg situation, that most good companies will ask you for some prior experience in product management before they actually take you in. But then there are also others that will hire directly from MBA schools. So right now in my year 2, and my program gets over by March. So my question is, what can I do right now that will rather stand out when I apply for these roles?
So there are a few things you can possibly do. You can look for internship opportunities in certain companies. They don't quite pay very well, but that can really be something that can be a value add to your resume. And it doesn't really have to be, if you get into one of the big ones, then that's great. But even if you're able to get into a slightly smaller scale company, which is not as well known as some of the big ones, but you're able to get some skills and some products under your belt, that will be a good skill. I think internship opportunity is a great idea. I think you can also in your, did you say it was a bank that you worked in? Sorry, you were breaking up initially.
Yeah, so I worked in the IT management team at HDFC Bank.
Okay, so in HDFC Bank. Okay.
Yeah.
So I know someone who moved from working in the HDFC Bank, and then they eventually moved into product management. And what they did was they joined a really small company. It was not really a startup. It was well funded, but it was not as big as HDFC Bank technically is. But they joined that, and they worked their way up into the career. So they started as a data analyst, and then they moved into product management within the company. So sometimes it may not be a direct path, but you should look into in your case, you should look into the companies where you see yourself spending some time, where you're aligned with the product they're building, or you're aligned with their business. And then if based on your past experience, even if you can't get into a product management role directly, but if you're inclined enough to stick around, you'd probably be able to make your way up. But you should look into companies that have product management as a function, then you should look into, again, like I keep going back to LinkedIn. I think, yeah, I've not been paid to say that, but I think LinkedIn has this you can look into people who are working into that company, and the kind of job functions that they have, that will give you a visibility into, okay, so this kind of makes sense. I can see myself spending some time here, and I can also like gradually get into the product management function if I directly don't. So you should always apply as a product manager, but if you don't, then like maybe apply into the role which can give you a path into product management. So maybe a business analyst or a data analyst or a product analyst. These are very valid job functions that help you build the skills. In my case, mine was a long journey into product management. I did QA, I did consulting, I did program management. But looking back and connecting my dots, I've realized that each of these skills has given me some really invaluable skills that I still apply on a day-to-day basis in my product management job. So, when my engineers come and tell me that, hey, the QA team needs to do this and that, I was a QA before. So I automatically relate to it that, oh yeah, so these are some of the things that they need to do. So, that has only helped me in becoming a slightly better product manager than I would have been if I didn't have those skills. My program management has, I'm like there's a running joke that on my projects, people don't need program manager because I do the job, because it's just something that I do. So sometimes maybe if you don't get into it directly, think of career paths that will take you there down the line, and it's okay to do that. Maybe you learn those skills in the way which will be invaluable.
Right. Just a follow-up question. So I am aware that there are some companies which have APM programs or rotational product management programs that hire directly fresh university graduates. Mm-hmm. So what I'm not aware is, does Google do that for MBA grads as well, or is it just for BTech bachelors?
I think Google does it for MBA grads as well. You should look into the APM program at Google, but the spots are very limited. It's there's a reason these programs, like they hire in like a very small number of people into these programs. But I know LinkedIn does it, Google does it, Facebook does it. A lot of other companies have similar PM rotation programs, so you should look into them. Like they are called the APM programs, the Associate Product Manager roles.
Yeah. So Richa, we have a lot of questions on chat section as well. So I'll take up one or two questions from there. So first we have a question from Shubham. How one can ask for a mentorship to someone they admire?
Yeah. Go ask them. I think it's taken me a while to realize that it's okay to ask. A lot of times we don't ask enough, and you should just reach out to the person. But I think what helps there is being a little more structured, and that will take you a slightly longer way rather than, probably the chances of you converting that mentor into really becoming a mentor would greatly increase if you look a little more prepared than just going up to them and telling them, hey, I want you to be your mentor, and they'd be like, who are you? I think it helps that you reach out to people, but then you also tell them what you're looking for. Your mentors can help you a lot if they understand how they can help you. So if you know what help you want from them, you admire them for certain reasons, but what are the skills you're hoping to learn from them? If you go prepared and you talk about and you tell them about the things that you struggle with or things that you want to build on, and then you do a little bit of a homework in driving that conversation, I think it will go a long way. But definitely ask people for mentorship. They will mostly never say no.
Next, we have a question from Anurag. Is MBA really required to get hired as a product manager in companies like Google, Facebook, Microsoft, LinkedIn, or even engineers can switch based on their experience as practicing product management?
Oh, some of the best PMs at Google have been engineers in the past. So, and some of the best PMs at Google have also been MBAs. So, like I said before, if you're doing an MBA, great. It's education is never bad, but if you don't have an opportunity to do an MBA, or if you've not done an MBA, it's not going to limit you from becoming a product manager. That you don't have certain skills may limit you, but not having an MBA will not.
Okay. Then we have a question from Zafar. He's asking if you can share the YouTube channel details that you mentioned earlier.
Yes, the one about the technical the boot camps, right? I'll put that in this deck. Piyush, should I send this to you and then you will share it in the channel?
Yeah, I'll share with the attendees.
Okay. Yeah, so I will put that link. There are a couple YouTube channels that are really good, and I'll link that here.
Okay. Then we have a lot of questions related to the same thing. So the question is, how much tech knowledge is required to get into a PM role at Google?
I think Google is a technical company. It was started by engineers. It is you need to be technical enough to work in a technical company. I think how much or how less is not a question that I can quite answer, because more or less is a very subjective term. What is important is that you understand the foundation on which certain products are built, the ones that you are working on, and that you understand the technical stack enough that you can have a conversation with your engineers. The more you know, the better it is, the better credibility you will have with your engineers. So yes, with that, does it mean that a lot of non-technical people never become PMs at Google? That's not true. Some of my peers come from marketing who do not have a CS degree, or who do not have who've not studied computer science, but they are doing really well because they take the time to learn things that they did not learn in their graduation. So these people have spent time in understanding how algorithms work, how data works, how data science works, how system design works. And like I said before, there are enough and more resources available for anyone to be able to pick that up. So yes, you need to be technical because you're working in a technical company. But do you need to have a computer science background? Not always.
Okay. Then we have a question from Hemant. Can you kindly share the slides? So slides I'll share with you after the session. After this, we have a question from Anurag. What are the tools which help product manager help in their day-to-day work? Any tool to create good mock-ups and presentations?
Yeah. So at Google, we use Google Slides for all presentations. So that's what I have used right now. I think for the Sketch is really good. Sketch is a really good tool. Balsamic is really good for creating product mocks, these are some good tools for making on product mocks.
And he has a follow-up question to it. What are the things to keep in mind while preparing for resume for product management roles? And how different is it from resume for some other managerial roles?
Ooh. So, sorry, I'm trying to look for this question so I can read it again.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I found it. Things to keep in mind while preparing the resume for PM roles and how different it is from resume for other managerial roles. I'm not quite sure I understand the question fully, but this is my interpretation of it, and let me know if that's right or wrong. You're asking about managerial roles. Are you talking about people management roles? Are you talking about other managerial roles like a program manager or an engineering manager? Because there is a difference in managerial roles. Like, even though your title is a product manager, you may not necessarily be a people manager. A lot of times a PM role is a very individual contributor sort of a role. So it's different from a typical managerial role when you have a team reporting into you. Over time, product managers start managing other product managers. But that's much later on in your career. So I think for building a resume for a product manager, you should really look into the company that you're applying to, and be able to tell a story with the work you've done in the past. And this is when you have some experience. When you don't have any experience, you can talk about the internships you've done or some side projects that you've taken, like, while you were studying. It's all about, like, product managers need to be great storytellers, and I think this is where it's a test of the kind of stories that you can tell to convince people that you can really be good at the job that you're applying for, and you in your mind should be convinced to do that as well. So look into the PM resumes online. There is plenty of that information out there, and then look into how your skills map with the requirements that the job has. So some jobs have, like, they're more enterprise in nature. So have you worked on any enterprise products? And if you have, then what are some things that you worked on? And if these are more consumer products, what are some things you've worked on? How much have you interfaced with design? How much have you interfaced with engineering, user research? So these are some things that matter. So it depends on the kind of companies that you're applying for and the kind of roles that you're applying for. But I would always say that if you're applying to a certain company and in a certain role, you should look into the profiles of other people who are in similar roles in these companies. That will give you a sense into what they are working on, and how your skills differ from theirs, and how you can build upon those skills and add them to your resume. I hope that answers.
Thanks. Then we have question from Chetan. Would you be able to recommend national product events for aspiring product management, especially healthcare, if you know any?
National product events. Is this for India or for the United States?
For US.
For US. Product events. I am not quite sure. I mean, I know there is a Women in Product event coming up next week. That is one group that I know. But there is a, I don't quite know of any major product events. I do know about some industry events, and Google keeps having its own events. Like, so we have the GML, which is the Marketing Live, where we talk about a lot of product launches for our advertisers. And then there is the Google I/O. There's Salesforce that has its event. There's Facebook, but I don't quite know of generic industry events. But I can ask around and circle back to you on that. I mean, aside from these, I don't quite know of any major industry product events per se.
Yeah, if you come to know in the future, and if you can share that, I would really appreciate that.
Sure, certainly. Thank you. I should. That's a good question. I mean, that triggered a brainwave in me. I need to know.
Next, we have a question from Shubham. Actually, it's a bunch of questions, so it will be great if you can read them. It's the last question in the chat.
Okay. Coding skills are required for APM rotations at Google. Is the knowledge of system design enough for clearing tech round of APM program of Google? So I don't know what the interview process for the APM program at Google looks like, because I've never been through one. But I would like to believe that it still follows some structure. So, you need to have, there'll probably be questions on product sense, product design, generic product management, and system design. I mean, these are important aspects of our current jobs at Google as well, and elsewhere as well. So whether you need a coding skill for APM rotations, I don't know. I don't think so. But that said, you need to understand. I mean, you need to be able to run basic queries to be able to extract data from for your reports, or you should be able to at least run some basic SQL queries. I think that's something that's good for anyone in general. Whether it's a make or a break, I think that's not a question I can answer, because I personally don't know about the recruitment process of the APM program. I'm sorry. But I'm sure the site, the Google Career site, should have information into this.
Thanks a lot for conducting such an insightful session with Pragmatic Leaders today. And I'm sure everyone would have some concrete takeaways from the session. We would love to have you once again.
Absolutely. I'm so glad I got to interact with so many of you. I wish you all the luck, and thank you so much for having me here. I'm happy to connect with more people, and yeah, we should talk about any other things that I can help with.
Yeah, definitely. And lastly, I would like to thank all the participants for joining us. And if someone of you might have joined later, so we run a product community on Slack. So I'm sharing the link of the community in a chat section. So you can join the community over there. And apart from this, we'll be sharing recording of this session on our YouTube channel. So I've shared the link in chat section. You can just go and subscribe to our channel. And if you have any queries related to anything, you can reach out to me. I've shared my email ID. And yeah, that's all from my end. Thanks a lot, Richa, once again.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Risha. Bye.
Bye.